it to yourself, and then just pair up with the person sitting right next to you and share your own definition.
Okay.
For the Positive Coaching Alliance, integrity means roots. And you can go to the next slide. And that roots is an acronym, and it stands for several different things. The first R of roots is the rules. And in every sport, there's written and unwritten rules. Can you guys think about an example of an unwritten rule in your sport?
Field hockey, if you get away with kicking the ball with your foot, good for you. Even though that's a rule, you're not allowed to hit the ball with your foot. But if nobody sees you, it just happens.
Right. And as coaches, it's up to us to lead by example and honor the letter and the spirit of the rules. Not just the way it's written, but also the way it's intended. Because that helps us be better opponents. One of the things the Positive Coaching Alliance says for O, opponents, is that a worthy opponent is a gift. Why on earth would they say that? What's that all about? Think about that and pair with the other person on the other side of you. Why would a worthy opponent be a gift? Does anyone want to share what they and their partner talked about?
I don't know if Ruben's frozen. He looks a little frozen.
He looks frozen.
Yes. Okay. We talked about a worthy opponent is a gift because they make you play harder. When you're up against somebody that's better than you, they can push you to work harder and to play better.
Yeah, definitely. Fierce but friendly competition. That's the spirit of all athleticism, all sports. The second O is officials. And I'm going to pause here and going through the roots real quick. The last root, or the last two letters, are teammates and self. But I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into officials. So let's go to the next slide and talk about a scenario.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to read through this.
Yeah.
We read through it. Okay. We need to, as coaches, have some tools for honoring the game. And let's say in the next scene, a coach or a referee makes a bad call. So, Kelly, I'm going to have you be a win-at-all-cost coach. Okay. And Ruben, I'm going to have you be a double goal coach. And invisible coach here, you're going to be the referee. So I want you, Kelly, to say what you think a win-at-all-cost coach would do. And I want you to direct it at this official.
Okay. So am I the win-at-all-cost?
Put you on the hot seat.
Am I the win-at-all-cost coach that's angry at the official's call?
Yes, at the bad call. You're the win-at-all-cost coach.
All right. So that was ridiculous. I can't believe you made that call. Are you blind? What's wrong with you?
All right, Ruben, you are the double goal coach, and I want you to direct your comments to the referee.
Well, I might not comment to the referee. I might not talk to him, but if I did, I'd say, I might say something like, what'd you see on that call? I saw it differently. Okay,
so then I would ask our referee how the referee felt as that coaching participant, being the mock referee, how they felt. And then I might remind ourselves as coaches that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? We as coaches have to lead by example because the kids, our athletes, are going to model what we do. And we want to be the best coaches and the most respectful to the officials. Lead by example. The T in Roots stands for teammates. And our teammates are who are going to create our culture. So Kelly, if you would advance another slide.
Do you want me to go ahead or back? I'm not sure where you
Forward.
Forward, okay.
Yep. As coaches, we have some tools that can help us honor the game. And here's our tools. And please refer to your book. This book is a tool, one more tool that we give you to be able to honor the game. I wish I had, I'm going to flip my screen for just a second.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So as coaches, we have our honoring the game toolkit. We have our self-control routines that we can teach ourselves. And then we have maybe some narrated modeling. And by that, we mean kind of verbalizing what's going on in our head, not because we necessarily need to verbalize it, but because it helps our athletes learn how to do it better. And we always want to be leading by example. All right, so let's go on to the T in teammates here. And our teammates are part of what's going to create our culture. And the culture, oh, shoot, I just lost Kelly.
I'm still here, sorry.
All right. Let's talk about what qualities, I'll just open up the floor. What qualities are most important for you personally in your team culture? I haven't heard a lot from you yet.
I would say a culture of support where we support each other through the good times and the bad times.
And what do you do to encourage that culture?
I start by telling the team that that's the kind of culture that I want to have, and why I think it's important, and why I think it'll help us not only enjoy the experience, but have some success and play better. And then when I see players doing stuff that is consistent with the culture, I reinforce it, I praise them, I point it out, I let others know that that's the way we want to do it.
Nice job being on the hot seat. Way to think on your feet there, Ruben. All right. Have you guys ever had someone that was the best athlete but the worst teammate on your team?
Mm-hmm.
And think about, we don't have to necessarily share, but think about how we would want to reframe the way that athlete thinks and help that athlete become a better teammate. So maybe we would sit down and have a conversation about what qualities make a great teammate, and ask our team who is going to create the culture on our team. And then open the floor up to discussion. And as coaches, we can maybe do some, like Ruben said, positive reinforcement when we see athletes doing the things that we really want them to be doing. Positive Coaching Alliance provides us with a short video on some key takeaways. So we're going to watch the video here.
The Julie Foudy?
The Julie Foudy video, yes, from Julie Foudy. Sorry, I should have.
That's okay. I just making sure.
Specify.
Yep.
All right.
You can burst down and watch it.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to pretend that we watched that Julie Foudy video. And I'm going to give you guys just a minute to discuss with the person sitting either in front of you or behind you that you haven't spoken with yet, and discuss with them what'd you get out of that video? What was the most striking thing? Maybe pick one thing. And I'll give you a minute just to think, pair, and share. All right, and if we advance to the next slide, the Positive Coaching Alliance identifies 3 key takeaways that we can have as coaches. One is connection, connecting with our athletes. Notice them in a positive way. Ruben gave a great example earlier about reinforcing the culture that he wants to see. The Elm Tree of Mastery, very, very key. That helps us fill our athletes' emotional tanks and gives them the stamina and possibly the internal fortitude to be better athletes and better teammates. And then number 3, the third key takeaway would be competing with integrity, so that we can feel proud of the accomplishments, that we have done the right thing in the right way. And then the last S is ourself. And we have to take care of ourselves to be able to move up that ladder and be a good teammate, to be respectful to the officials, to be a worthy opponent, to respect the rules. So we as coaches can use the tools in our toolkit on the next slide to promote the best sense of self and team among our athletes. So what can we do? Number one, increase that eat-tank ratio. Be sure we're doing that 5-to-1. We can do that by giving our athletes the buddy system. You heard about that in this presentation. By using positive charting, by doing a winner's circle. All of those are great tools to be able to promote your team and support your team to be their best selves. The Elm Tree of Mastery. Notice when kids are doing something right. Reward them for trying. And let's try to continually remind them that mistakes are okay. You make mistakes, I make mistakes. We all make mistakes every day. And helping, maybe doing some external narration of our own thought process will help the athletes become better at accepting their own mistakes. And then last but not least, honoring the game. We want to model and teach that. We want to teach our athletes how to have a self-control routine. And that narrated modeling really works well, especially with the athletes I work with as gymnasts who have that super hypercritical negative voice. So I want you to pick someone you have not discussed with yet, maybe even find a group of 3 and talk about which strategies work best for you. Which is easiest for you? Increasing your positive to negative ratio, that Elm Tree of Mastery, or modeling and teaching, doing the narrated modeling. What have you found to be the best tool in your coaching toolbox, and what one do you need to grow the most in? Tick, tick, tick. Okay, so you've all thought about it. You've shared in your group of 3. Does anyone want to volunteer to be on the hot seat and contribute where their strengths for their team and where their greatest areas of growth lie?
I'll share. So I haven't used a lot of these tools before. This is my first time at a PCA workshop. So, but I think that I do a pretty good job as a coach at filling their emotional tanks, and maybe not such a great job at teaching them how to respect the officials. Maybe I'm not a good example of that. Is that what you're asking?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So the Positive Coaching Alliance has a ton of tools that we can refer to when we find ourselves making those mistakes and want to grow as coaches. The first resource that they have is that book right there on the table in front of you. Highlight it, scribble in it, bookmark it, dog-ear it, do whatever you need to do to remember that there is a written tool for you to see. Then definitely sign up for those weekly emails, those positive talking points. I know that with my gymnasts, I did a PowerPoint presentation, and each week I'd put a new talking point up on the wall, and that would be our focus for the week, and they'd get to put a gem in the jar every time they reinforce someone or use that talking point or caught somebody else using the talking point. And then the first team to fill their gem jar got to have donuts at the end of practice. So those positive talking points can be used in lots of different ways, that weekly email. And then the third resource that the Positive Coaching Alliance provides for you is the development zone. And that's the online resource that you can go to and refer to old blogs or do whatever you need. As we wrap up our presentation here today, I want to thank you for your commitment to coaching and to developing better athletes. I also want you to stop and think, and if you want to share, that would be absolutely fabulous, about something that you learned at the workshop today, something that was new for you that you've said, that's something I might want to think about and put in my toolbox to work on. I know Kelly said that being respectful to the officials was one of the things that she wants to, one of the areas where she wants to grow. Does anybody else have an area where they sort of learned something today and maybe want to use that for their own professional development?
Well, for me, all these tools are new. So I think I can try a lot of them, and especially the mistake ritual. I think I can do a better job of helping my athletes bounce back from mistakes and understand that the mistakes are just part of the game. So I think that's one of the first ones I'll try. And that's definitely new for me. I've never thought about giving my players a ritual to use to help them get back from mistakes.
I can see the gears going in your head on that, Ruben. I hope that you find the way that works best with your athletes. And remember, it's okay if the first way you try doesn't work, because mistakes are okay. Keep trying to help them find a way to get beyond their own shortcomings. Before we go, I want to remind you to fill out the evaluation in your book on page 71, and be sure you sign in on your cell phone so that you get credit for this training today. Is there anything else that I as a trainer can provide for you right here at this moment?
No.
Well, I want to thank you again for your time and your respectful contributions today, and remind you to use those 3 resources. And I'm happy to be a resource for all of you at any time. I'll give you my email, my business card, and you can feel free to contact me or anyone else at the Positive Coaching Alliance for the support that you need to make better athletes and better people.
Thanks, Jen. All right.
Thank you both.
Go. I know Ruben has to leave, so I'm going to let him share with you first.
Yeah, well, Jen, what from your last demo to this one, what were you trying to do differently or add or change? Any particular focus you had coming into this one?
I felt like I needed to be more structured and more confident in my own presentation, and not backtrack on what I've said to try to remember to get everything in. So I made a couple of notes for myself. I rehearsed it more, and that I really tried to boil down what I wanted to say in the order I wanted to say it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Whereas I feel like the last presentation, I had so much I wanted to say, I didn't pare it down enough.
Okay. And do you feel like you executed on that today?
I do feel like I did a better job at distilling down the talking points today.
And you know, I got on late. I had that computer trouble. Did you start from the beginning of the Honoring the Game section?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So you actually covered a good amount of the workshop very concisely. So clearly you did cut down and you kept yourself moving faster. I will say there were a couple times where you know, Kelly and I know the PowerPoint pretty well, and there were a couple times where I got thrown off, like on respect for self, the S. I felt like we had moved beyond roots, and then you came back to respect for self. And was that intentional, or?
I did at the beginning when I was going through that initial slide say that I went through the first R, the O, and the second O, and then I said T stands for team and S stands for self, and I'm going to come back to those later.
Okay, so I missed that. Okay, very good. So I had missed that. All right. Well, I'll let Kelly give you additional feedback, and Kelly, I'm gonna get off so I can open up the audition for Nora Gettins. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you,
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Kelly.
Back.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, is that your phone now? I'm like, wait a
It's just me now.
Yeah, that's okay. Jen, so how did you feel doing that then? Did you feel more confident that time?
I did feel more confident. I felt more focused, a little less scattered, and that I did a better job of getting across PCA's message in PCA verbiage.
I agree. I think the content that you had was awesome. I think the stories you had, the examples you have, everything that you used was great. Most of the suggestions I have down here are just an order of things because it seemed a little bit confusing jumping back and jumping forth. And one thing that I've learned is that what I know in my head is completely different than what the coaches know. So saying like, I'll come back to that later and jump, that really confuses coaches. So we have to get even more simple. So I think everything that you said is great. I would just shift your order around a little bit.
Okay.
So I just took a couple notes. If I took them kind of sequential so that I could sort of make it clear to you what I mean. Off the bat, I think what does integrity mean is a great question, because I think that's kind of ambiguous. And you said you have a share with a partner, which I think is fantastic. I would encourage you to have us share out loud. What does integrity mean? I don't know if you were just skipping it for the sake of time, but having the whole group really talk about this word integrity and what that means, because I guarantee coaches don't even think about that. Coaches are thinking about, how can I get my players to do this skill? How can I get my players to pay attention? How can I get my players to stop whacking each other over the head with their baseball bats? You know, they're not thinking this principle is at the end, because it's really the umbrella. It's really the big picture. And you did a nice job at bringing up the point of culture. I mean, this is about culture. And when you have this strong culture, that's when everything else is going to fall into place. You can't teach mastery and you can't fill tanks if you have a lousy negative culture on your team of kids that are rude to each other. So I thought that was really nice the way you did that. When you go through the roots, I'd like a little bit of a better transition, because you said something about like honoring the game is about roots. And that's just kind of quick. Like, why do you think we use the acronym ROOTS?
Okay.
Why would you say? Why did we?
Oh, are you asking me that right now? Okay.
I'm asking.
I think because, like you said, I mean, that's what anchors the tree of everything else. I mean, that's how you really get down into teaching more than just the athletics.
Right. So I think just saying things like that helps the transition to we have 5 areas that we believe the players should just have respect for. We're talking about honoring the game, but we're also talking about breaking it down. Instead of just saying, oh, let's all have good sportsmanship. We want you to be specific, and we want you to raise the bar. We want you to have high expectations for your athletes. And I'm recording this too, so you can always watch this back. But our expectations are that the athletes will respect these 5 areas of the game, and we use the acronym ROOTS to help you remember it. So just a little transition like that, just to help make it super crystal clear. I always say, if you pretend that you're talking, if you explain something like you're talking to a first grader, then a 50-year-old's going to understand it too. But if you try to talk too fast through things, it just muddies the water. So I would just be real clear about that. Then I like how you talked about like athletes will model what we do. You said teammates. Teammates are really important for culture, which I agree with that as well. But I would also say all of these. I mean, all of these hold as much value to upholding a strong culture, not just teammates. I think it's all of it. And so you brought up that teammates are really important to model a good culture before we got to the T. You know what I'm saying? So kind of threw that in a little bit early. When you get to the T, then you can talk about how important it is for the culture of teammates. But I think that was a little confusing. Then I love the question too. What qualities are important in a team culture, and what do you do to encourage it? I think that was one of your best questions, because again, that's the action part. That's the part that coaches might all say, oh, I want a positive team culture. I want everybody to be friends. I want everybody to be respectful. That's in our brains, but what are you doing about it? And a lot of coaches aren't actively doing something. So that's where, when you get into each of these like rules, opponents, officials, teammates, and self, it comes down to, it's kind of a double reflection. It's one, how are you doing in each of those areas? You know, think back at your team. These are the areas we want you to respect. And then number 2, how are you being proactive about teaching that to your athletes? So there's a lot of fun things you can do. I think that when you go through each of these, and you had all the lingo down, I mean, the fierce and friendly, you did a great job at explaining each of them. I would not jump around.
Okay.
There's a reason that we put them all together, and it's more for a memory tactic than it is order. I understood what you were doing by saying, well, the next scenario is about official, so let's stop there and jump ahead. But I think it's just too confusing. So I would just stick with, rules, opponents, officials, teammates, and self, and make them questions. It's a lot more fun for the coaches if you ask rather than tell them everything. So, I mean, I know you saw my demo. I get people to go around the room and pick one that's most difficult for them as a coach to show respect. Which one's the most difficult for your team? Which one do you think you do a really good job at? And then we share those out. But even if you don't want to do that, moving around the room, just to have them see on the screen, ROOTS, and see on the screen, okay, this is what we mean by these, but ask them. So why is it important to respect the rules? How do you show respect for your opponents? How do you teach your players? So what do we do to show respect for the officials, even when we disagree with the call? How about teammates? What do you coaches do to have the player, do you have a set standard for what respect looks like in terms of teammates? And I tell coaches this all the time. I have coaches all the time say, oh yeah, it's really important that my players respect each other. And then I look out on the field and somebody drops the ball and they're screaming at him. Is that really respect? And what are you doing? A lot of coaches think, well, that's just part of the game. The guys, trash talking each other. But that's disrespecting a teammate. So it's almost like, Jen, almost like you're calling coaches out, saying, put your money where your mouth is. Don't tell me that you want all these areas. And you're not like, reprimanding them. But it's just getting them to think a little bit about, are your actions matching up what you really want? So having it simply to go through those. And then the next part is the scenario, because this is where you take all 5 of the, even though the scenario is specifically about officials, you can really take all 5 of those areas and work it into the scenario. So the scenario, the opposing coach has been, so there's opponent right there. Opposing coach has been riding the refs the whole game. It seems to be working. Now in the final moments, the official makes a horrible call against your team. What can you do? So you did a good job. You said pair. I usually get them in groups for this to talk about it. Then they share out what their idea would be. Then you can actually use the acronym ROOTS to kind of debrief this. Okay, how would you show respect for the rules of the game? How would you show respect for officials? How would you show respect for opponents in this scenario? How would you show respect for, how would the teammates show respect for each other? And then how about self-respect? Where does that come in? So, you can use ROOTS that way, or you can just go right to the tools then. We have a lot of tools that can help, because you have to remember, and this is at the top of this slide, it's so easy to be a double goal coach who's focusing more on life lessons when your team's winning or when there's no controversy. It's when your team is losing and there's a major issue when a lot of coaches go, I'm not a win at all cost. I'm a win at all cost coach now. Forget the life lesson. So where it says double goal coach moment of truth, that's where we're talking about when the rubber hits the road and things get tough. Are you choosing the life lesson or are you choosing the win? So the tools that are on page 47, 46, and 48, I think it says, have them open up the book and share it. This is also a great moment, Jen, for you. Bring up an example of an athlete that you've coached or an athlete that you've seen that, when things got tough, all respect went out the window. And how did you handle it? Or, maybe you had an issue when you were an athlete or something, like some kind of a personal connection story is really great to put in here.
Okay.
It also helps too. Like I've often shared stories too, just about times when I flipped out on officials, before I really realized the repercussions of it. Like I'm flipping out on an official because I disagree with the call. I did that because I was embarrassed, number one, because I wanted to show the parents that I was really angry that official made a mistake. But I never thought about the fact that I had all these little people looking at me, following my example. So I'll share that in a workshop just to be vulnerable, to say, we all do it. It's emotional, but we're supposed to be the adults here that see the big picture and realize we can't just flip out. If we're expecting our players to keep their emotions in check, we can't just flip out when an official does something we don't like. So just looking more at the big picture. I also like the way you circle back with Ruben. I love that when you can do that and say, well, Ruben mentioned culture. Coaches love that. That fills their tank, honestly, when you do that. And then I also, let me see what I said. Oh, this slide right here. The creating a positive culture. Again, I like to set this video up a little bit more because Julie Foudy was on a team for 2 decades and culture is not built overnight. So one of the things that we've gotten a lot of experience from Julie Foudy on is creating a team culture, but it happens over time. So Julie Foudy in this video is talking about the culture on her team. So just setting it up a little bit to say, here's somebody in high school or youth sports, you might be the captain for 1 season. She was the captain for 10 seasons. So, she
knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, she does. She's had conflicts to her culture and she's had to deal with it right away. And, grabbing a bag of balls. But then she also says, this isn't going to be easy. We're going to kick you. We're going to push you, but we're also going to respect you. We're not going to haze you, and this is what my culture is all about. The next slide here, this one I think was a little fuzzy. If you go back and watch, the 3 key takeaways these are the takeaways to the whole workshop. So this is basically where the workshop is over. The honoring the game is over. And so this is a review. So, thank you so much for your attention in this workshop today. In the very beginning, we talked about our 3 principles. And hopefully today you got some things out of this. We talked about connection, we talked about improvement, and we talked about integrity. And those were the 3 principles. And then the next slide is where you would ask, which of these tools did you hear today that would help your team the most? So you were asking us, I forget what question, which one is easiest for you, or which one have you done? If you've just taught these principles to the coaches, I would assume that a lot of them haven't done this yet. So I mean, the end of the workshop is more to review what you did in the workshop and which ones do you think you will put into practice in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get to the point. Well, I wanted to acknowledge that we all do some little bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
But we all could do more.
Yeah.
And we want to continue to keep growing so that we keep doing more. Even people that have been doing this for years,
yeah,
and this is their 5th workshop or 10th workshop, there's still areas where we can all grow in. So I wanted to acknowledge what people were doing already.
Yeah.
And then say, let's focus on one area to start growing in.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And maybe that's more for this this slide with the E-Tank, Elm Tree of Mastery, and honoring the game. But I mean, I'm just letting you know the purpose of the slide is to review tools that we talked about. You also mentioned that there's going to be a ton more in this book, which is great. Which ones do you think would help your team? Which ones could work with your team? And the other one, when you mentioned the talking points, I thought that was great. I'd like to know specifically, which talking points do you put gems in the jar for? It seemed a little bit vague. Like if I don't know what I don't even know what talking points are because I've never seen them before. So if you're talking about the gems in the jar, I think that's great. Just be specific and tell me, for example, one of the talking points is, when you fill your teammates' tanks or something like that, and that's what so just be specific as possible. Okay. And the only other thing is I caught you a couple times saying presentation. We call them workshops instead of presentations intentionally so that they can feel like they're working. But that was just a little picky thing. Ruben usually picks up the little wordsmiths, but he's not here. So that was on his behalf. Yeah. So, I mean, I know this was your final presentation, but I would really love to see, I feel like the last 2, again, you've got so much to say and so much information. I just feel like it just needs to be polished a little bit more so that it's just more streamlined and just, I think, a little bit smoother. Because I think you do have so many great things to say and so much great information. I would just like to see it flow a little bit more smoothly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, we're not knocking down the doors in Kansas City yet to get you out there. There aren't a ton of workshops out in that area yet. So you have time. So I would love to give you the opportunity to practice maybe one of the other principles you haven't done yet. And just try to keep it flowing from one to the next and just, so that it's not like a little bit disjointed and it's just like nice and concise and get the coaches involved and just go from there. Would that be something you'd be willing to do?
Yeah, I'll keep trying.
Okay. The other thing too, and I think we're a little tougher on new areas because nobody's heard of PCA. So in a new area, when there aren't a lot of workshops yet, the first impression is huge. And so it's kind of the chicken or the egg because we want to get trainers that are, super ready to go, but you don't have a lot of opportunities to get ready to go, right. So not a lot of chances to practice, but we want you to be on top of your game when you do get out there. So I just want to give you as many opportunities as I can so that when you do get out there into a new area, that it's really sharp and smooth and, concise and all of that stuff.
The elm tree, the presentation I did with Jim when I did the elm tree and really could break it down and focus on, mistake rituals because it was gymnastics and it was an area that I knew better. That I felt like really helped me grow like a lot more. I'm very kinesthetic. So doing it really does help me more than.
I agree.
So yeah, I learned a lot and that was a great experience.
Good. And I will keep sending them to you when they're in your area. I will keep sending them to you. But in the meanwhile, I'd love to have you just practice through even just the wordage, the words and how you say things and the more you practice, the better you get. So I'd love to give you that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let me know when you're ready to do that. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Bye.